No.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
You come exactly at 5, so I was wondering if no one is coming.
Oh, yeah.
Eric is here.
Hello, everyone. Let's wait another minute. See if someone else is joining us before we start.
Yeah. Eric, the link you have sent it. It's available to edit from anyone. Just create an account and I can edit.
I don't remember. I think so. Andrea and Emil, the HackMD notes, they are open to anyone who's registered with like a GitHub account, right? You don't need any special permissions to be able to edit it.
I think so. If not, please let us know and we'll see how we can fix it.
Yeah. I'm just asking because it looks like I'm able to edit, but I need kind of sign in. So.
Yeah, you do need to be signed in. You can sign in with your GitHub account if you want to.
Oh, that's great.
Okay, I guess it's 3 past, so it's a good time to get started. Welcome, everyone. So this is the CDEvents working group. Today is August the 9th. And let me see if I can share my screen. Hopefully it works.
Yeah, seems fine.
Yeah.
Okay. So my name is Andrea Frittoli. I work for IBM. And yeah, feel free to sign yourself in the participant list. And yeah, so we have a couple of things on the agenda for today. If there are more things that you would like to discuss, feel free to add them to the agenda as we go. Just one quick note I wanted to start with. So this meeting is recorded so that everyone knows. And I set up some automation using Zapier. For now, it's at least with my personal account. But basically, once the meeting recording is complete, it's automatically uploaded into YouTube. And then I just have one manual step left, which is to go and edit into the playlist so that the recording is available then in the CDEvents playlist. And yeah, so the first 3 is the Python SDK demo.
Real quick, can I can't edit and add myself. Is there a reason for that to this document?
You have account? You have account with this account with this website?
I just have a GitHub account that I just linked to it.
Okay.
And you're not able to.
There is an edit button on the left side.
Oh, maybe that's why. Okay, thank you.
Yes, so I have invited my colleague Tarek here today because he's the one that has been working on the Python SDK for us. And yeah, I think Tarek, when you're ready, you can hopefully you can take over the screen sharing. If not, you need to be assigned co-host by someone, but you can try it and then go ahead and show us what you got.
Okay, so okay, I'll try to share screen from here. Name this one.
Are you able
Yeah,
to share?
I think I can share screen. You can see my screen.
I think we can
Yes.
see all your screeners right now, but that's fine.
Sorry, what you're saying?
I think we can see multiple screens right now, but that might be fine. Yeah, so
You see multiple screen. Okay.
I don't know. It looks good, I guess. We see a terminal on the right side and
Yeah, this is one screen. This is not two screen.
okay, then it's fine.
I have a wide screen.
Okay,
So,
good.
So I was working with first of all, I'm Tariq. I'm Eric colleagues. We both working in Dual. We're mainly in Dual doing projects for CD and CI. So that's why we might be involved in this kind of open source project. So me and Eric was working on a project, an SDK for Python for CDEvent. So if we have a similar SDK, Go version. As you might know, so this Go version, it's a kind of a CLI, CMD application to send to create event and directly send it from the terminal. So I created here a receiver. This is just for testing. Whenever you would like to send event using this Go SDK, you can just send it for this receiver. So I put on this receiver and send one test from the Go SDK. So it's just calling the binary, give it which kind of event we'd like to send, and it is started, and a couple of metadata. And when we click, it sends it, and we have the receiver receive the data here. So what we was looking for is to create exactly the same thing with kind of tweaking for Python, but using Python. But we just create the same SDK but using Python. So what we have here, we have mainly two package, one as a core and one as a CLI. The core package is include separated object for each event. So we have, for example, branch event, we have artifactory event, we have build event and environment event. As we have in Go version, we have for each event kind of it's kind of choiceable or enum to represent for this environment event what's happened. It's created or it's modified or it's deleted. And when you send this event on the other side, the receiver will receive this type of event. It's, for example, build start version 1. So that's exactly what we have here. We have kind of object representation for each event, included the metadata related to this event. So for example, for the environment, we have ID and name and repo. For the build, we have ID and name and the artifactory, and it's kind of different from like in pipeline. It's a bit different. ID and name and the state and URL. So we just create here the object and make it ready to be sent or to be modified after. From this point, we have planning to also receive the event. So what we have here is we just create the event, and I will show you how we send it through the CLI. But we have also kind of vision like that. We can also from the receiver side that you can receive this event and understand this event like this kind of build object start. But this is still under working. It's not fully done. So this is the core package, the core build or the core for the package, and the other package is the CLI, which is first of all is to configurable. So you can configure your host, your receiver URL and your source name because it's reflected here, your source name. So you can configure it from an YAML file. And here is the sender. So the sender, in this case, it's just basically an CMD application. You create the event, and you just send it by execute run. And this run, it's send the event, it's kind of HTTP request, but it's using the cloud event HTTP client. And we have also for all the events we have, like we have for Artifactor, for branch, for building, for environment, for pipeline, and so on. So I can show you like how we exactly execute a command using the CLI. It's pretty similar to for what we have in Go. So we have the binary. It's not binary in this case. It's a Python package, and we just send the metadata. So here, okay, here I'm in the Python package executor. So if I need to send this package, it will send it, and you will find it here. Send it to the receiver, who's kind of exactly the same metadata. You send it by Go. It's a bit different. Like for example, we have ID. This is random generator, so it should be different as the time is different. But otherwise, everything is the same. That's basically what we have built. And we have a couple of things above. Like for example, we have a Dockerized application. We have fully tested, fully covered tested for the application, and everything is it's executed by Make, so you can make test, and it's tested all the application. And also, if you don't want to install Python stuff, you can have a Docker. You can have it through Docker. And you can execute it. You can execute the same exact command through a Docker container, and it will also like here is the receiver. It's empty now. Through the Docker bash, you can send the same exact command, and it will send it to the receiver. So that's basically what we have done with the Python SDK. We still have kind of future vision what we can do. We would like to have kind of receiver. So that's why we prepare the core to be able to understand the object. So when you receive the object, you will understand this is kind of artifact object. And that's it. If you have any question about what you have done.
Thanks, Tarek. Just wanted to mention, so the goal for this first version has just been to try to be on par with the current Go SDK. Now the Go SDK is changing as well, which I think is good. And we have, as Tarek mentioned, plans for the Python SDK as well. So something that should be discussed is how similar do we want the different SDKs to be? Do we want someone who knows the SDK in one language and knows the other programming language to have a very easy time moving over to the other SDK? Or is it more like creative freedom to design something that feels like it belongs in that particular language, if you know what I mean?
Yeah, so I think idiomatic is really important per language. Like being, if you're a Go engineer, for example, right? And you're using an SDK, you expect it to be idiomatic Go, right? And if it's not idiomatic Go, then it makes it a little painful for someone to use. It's not a like a killer, but it makes it more painful because they have these sort of set expectations. Yeah. So I definitely think having it be something that the language is used to, whatever those conventions are, I think is really, really important for the end user. So that's kind of like my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I think even if that means that the SDKs don't end up being as similar as they could have been, with some good example code, people will hopefully find it quite easy to move from one SDK to the other, given that they have understood the base concepts from using one of the SDKs. That's what I think.
Exactly. I think that's perfect. And then one thing that I kind of want to call out, because like in the last, I haven't been to these SIG meetings in the last couple of weeks. Sorry, I've been out on vacation, but I did mention that I have a lot of experience with SDKs. And one thing that I noticed is that you guys are using, you guys have a lot of these shared models. Have you guys considered using something like Swagger, Open API or Smithy or any of these modeling languages to kind of generate these shared objects? So, when you make one change in one SDK, all these objects get updated throughout all the SDKs, right? So it's kind of enforces that consistency.
Yeah, that's definitely something that we have discussed. I think we even have like an issue or something on the roadmap related to that. It's early days right now, but definitely that is on the roadmap. So we would like to be able to generate at least a substantial part, both of this SDK and the corresponding documentation and schema files and stuff for CDEvents as a whole. So yeah, that's definitely on the agenda.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, because I think it'd be a good idea to start it earlier rather than later, just because like my worry is, if things start to diverge in any way, like fixing those or like generating that code is going to be a breaking change. So I think we're, especially now that I think we have 3 SDKs. We have the Go, Python, and Java, right? So I think we're at a good place to actually start doing that. And then on top of that, I was curious, like, do you guys have a link to the Go SDK? Because I'm trying to find it, and I just see this main branch, but there's no code in it.
Yeah, I think it's still in the SIG events.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, so it hasn't been moved yet. There is an issue for that as well, but that work hasn't been done. Yes. Any more questions for Tarek regarding the Python SDK before we move back to the agenda?
So how easy is it for me to like use or modify any of this? Like what I mean by that, like let's say I'm a user, right? And I'm using this SDK and can I inject like a handler? Is there an easy way to kind of customize the request going to I guess to this event store, this receiver, because I can definitely see like maybe wanting to add like some sort of custom maybe authenticator payload or something of that nature may be important or might be interesting to the end user. Just like being able to customize how the command gets executed, if you will, given that flexibility to the end user. Has that been thought about at all?
No, I don't think we've given that any thought. So basically, you're talking about different kinds of hooks, for instance. So
exactly,
you could have a hook like when we have created the actual HTTP request before we send it, we pass it over and see if anyone wants to change it before we send it. That kind of stuff.
Yep.
I mean that sounds like a neat idea and something that would be interesting to add as well. But nothing like that exists right now.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I found the Go SDK, so I might be able to. I'll have to talk to my manager and see, because like I said, like I'm at Apple and we're very, very protective on like what I can contribute code wise. But if I can't contribute code wise, I'll definitely create issues or comment on pull requests and see what I can do there.
That sounds good. Really good. Yes. Did anyone have anything else for Tarek?
No, just want to say thanks for doing this. I mean, it looks like a great start, and I like all the packaging options that you're giving it as well. So that's really handy. I think it would be good to get this into the CDEvents org. So
yeah, Tarek, you can start to prepare a pull request for this towards the CDEvents organization.
Yeah, I have a question for my understanding. Why we would like to keep it in a specific object name? Like, for example, we would like to have something called artifact or something called building. Like, why we don't have it as a dynamic, and each object represented with a couple of metadata, everything is in JSON file, and this kind of dynamic to send or to create whatever additional event you need. Like, why you limit it for this kind of events?
I think, I mean, for the vocabulary to have any meaning, there has to be at least a few shared events that the people or the systems that send the data and the systems that receive the data can both understand and trust. Otherwise, I mean, if you want to be able to send anything and receive anything, then the answer would be cloud events. That is the protocol that you use to be able to send anything and receive anything. So CDEvents is I'm not sure what to call it, an extension, but it's a specification on top of cloud events. Or
yeah, an abstraction layer, right, on top of it.
That says, here are a bunch of messages explicitly that you can send, and we promise that these events mean something, and that the receivers will be able to understand them. And then, I mean, if users want to send cloud events next to CDEvents, there's nothing preventing that. They can send whatever they want using cloud events, but that's not the purpose of the SDK. The cloud events SDK can be used for that. Our SDK should specifically send and receive CDEvents. That's my view on it.
Yeah, and ultimately we'll need to create a set of conformance tests so that we can verify that the SDKs are producing the events that we want, and we need to port those tests and in the different languages so we can make sure that we are doing the right thing and in all the SDKs. And that's, I mean, even if we generate them or some part of them, there's some automation, I think still we will need to have like consistent testing across the SDKs.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Tarek. Really good demo. Thanks. Yes. So I added some stuff then as the next bullet, SDK Readiness Checklist. Basically thinking about what does it mean to have a first version of the SDK. As Tarek has shown now, we have the Python SDK to a level where we can send events, primarily through the CLI, but it would be possible for other like applications or scripts to use the core module and send events using that. Receiving events is not something that we have right now, but Tarek has started to think about how to implement it. So I guess, I mean, it seems reasonable that if we want to call something an SDK, we should be able to both send and receive events, whatever that means. Third bullet is perhaps a bit more controversial, depending on I will steal the concept that Ben brought up, idiomatic. If it's idiomatic in whatever language that you're talking about, to have classes for these event types. For Python, I guess it's 50-50, depending on what school of Python you happen to subscribe to. I am an object-oriented person by heart, so I love the type hinting and class support in Python, and would like to have proper documented type hinted classes for every single event type, so that when I receive an event or send an event, I send an object of a very specific class, preferably immutable as well, so I know what I'm doing. But it doesn't have to work like that. We could do more of a dynamic approach, relying more on like dictionaries and those kind of things to not have to have as much code. But I would like to bring that question up for discussion. Like, can an SDK be considered ready without having these classes? Yeah, I don't have a super strong opinion on it. I'm just wondering, basically.
So I am very opinionated on this portion of things, mostly because of documentation. When you have defined classes, users know what to expect, and they can easily go to the documentation and find it. And if it is, a strongly typed, and they can do that just all through code, right? They can just go to the class and see, what the necessary fields or types are, right? But if it's just a dictionary, you can't go to the fields in a dictionary, right? Like the dictionary is just a dictionary. So I think it's going to be harder for users to understand like what this object's going to look like, right? So I agree with you, Eric. I am 100% in the, object-oriented, I think all classes should be, I guess, strongly typed as much as possible. because in the end, it does make it easier for users.
Yeah, that summarizes my opinion very, very well. So you can have things like type hinted and documented properties in events, for instance, so that users both know exactly what properties exist in this event and also what do they mean, and additionally, what type are they, so they can get good support from wherever IDE or type checking system that they happen to be using. Tarek has started doing this work as well. I saw, Tarek, that you had some like branch created event and those kind of things. So I think basically we are planning to do this for the Python SDK, and yeah, hope that we get acceptance for that. I'm not saying that it has to be part of every language's SDK. It again, I guess, depends a little bit on how those languages typically look, but I do strongly agree with Ben that the more support we can get the programming language or the IDEs to give to the users, the better off our users will be.
Yeah, I tend to agree as well. And given the polymorphism capabilities of Python, I think that can give a nice SDK experience to users as well.
Yeah, and I don't oppose either, as long as it's relevant for the programming language in question to use classes, then I think that's perfectly fine to, I'm not sure require, but at least strongly propose to use classes. For languages like Java, there is no option really.
Yeah, good. That sounds really good. So my final question on that topic was, is there anything else that we should like have in the readiness checklist? When we have support for sending, receiving events, and we have classes for all the different events that we have, maybe that's good enough for a first version of an SDK. It should be enough for people to use it.
When you say first version, do you mean like GA or do you mean like alpha? Like what is first version, I guess?
It's a good question. I would say GA, but it would be for a very early version of the spec, of course, which makes it an alpha in some sense. But from the SDK, I would say should be general availability level, hopefully.
Okay, well, if that was the case, I'm going to go off of what Andrea had said earlier, because I think this is really important. It's having cross compatibility tests between the SDKs. The reason why I say that is because if you have one SDK that isn't generating the right thing, but is sending events, and then you have another SDK that's trying to like read or, is also sending events, but they're different, that like if you try to fix that later on, even if it's even a small difference, right, that's going to be a breaking change for people that are using it, or even in the event store, right, can have a lot of issues trying to fix that. So
that's a very good point. Yeah.
Yeah, and I totally agree as well. And I would like to add to the list there that, of course, that we should have test cases showing that we actually can build all events and can parse all event types. And those test cases would serve as some kind of documentation of how to use the SDK as well. But on top of the test cases, I think we should also require some kind of documentation stating in the appropriate documentation structure for the language, whether it's Doxygen or whatever for different languages. We should have documentation as well, of course, stating all the how to use all the different classes, then, or how to create events and parse events.
Are we talking documentation? Like in Python, there would be two options. Either we have a really good README markdown file in the top, which becomes very visible in your GitHub repository, or we have a Sphinx site or something similar deployed to read the docs.
I would rather see generated documentation that is really connected to the code and not just a separate markdown file, which could be different from what the code actually does.
Yeah, and that's what I was kind of saying, like, that's what's great about using like something like Swagger or something, because it generates all that documentation, right? So
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, one question I had was about the CLI. So at the moment we have CLI now in Python, we have the CLI in Go. I wonder whether we should have one CLI and have all the other SDKs being just SDKs. Or if we want to support like having the CLI to send events in multiple languages as well.
Oh, I didn't
Yeah,
even know we
but-
had 2 CLIs.
Yeah, but sorry. But in that case, like you would like the CLI to call the binary, whatever it's built in C++ or Go or whatever, and give it the data, and the binary or the SDK sends that like execute to receive it, whatever. That's what you're looking for.
Basically, that only one of the SDKs would need to have a corresponding CLI application connected to it, and I think that makes sense. There isn't really that much of a use case to have multiple CLIs because then there are multiple things that we need to keep up to date. The reason we built it for the Python SDK was just to like as a first step make it do exactly what the Go SDK does, just to have a starting point. So I'm fine with just having one CLI. It would, of course, be preferable, however we saw that, for that CLI to be easy to run on as many different operating systems and machines as we possibly can. But I'm not a cross-platform expert, so I don't know how to do that most easily.
Yeah, Go is cross-platform, strongly typed, good CLI language, but also Python is also a great CLI language. So I'm okay with either. Probably the better option is probably Python, just because it's easier to distribute, because you don't have to make all these other binaries for all the other machine platforms. So I would probably lean more towards Python, just because it makes releases easier. You just release the Python CLI and you're done. You don't have to worry. You just have to assume that they have the Python VM and you're good, right? But the Go is a little bit more. It's not more. It's just slightly more complicated.
The challenge, which I'm sure there's a better solution for when it comes to Python that I've encountered, is if people need to have a specific Python version, then it's sometimes a little bit hellish to install the correct Python version, depending on what operating system you're using. But I do agree that there is, once you have that Python version installed, it's usually quite trivial to get the CLI running, because you can just fetch the package and it installs the CLI command and puts it in path for everybody. So that's nice. I'm not sure, Tarek, do you know if the CloudEvents Python SDK, does that require any particular Python version? Like, what's the minimum Python version you can use for the CloudEvents SDK?
No, I don't know actually, but in my case, I used a feature already exists in 3.9. So I think we can have much easier solution is to in the situation or in the case for the CLI to depend on Docker. So you can have like Docker image, you just pass a couple of parameter and it execute whatever you need. So
yeah, I mean that will work fine for anyone who has Docker, but for those who don't have Docker, it's useless.
And Docker is also really heavy, right? Like you don't want to spin up a new container every time you run a command, right? So yeah.
But then for the Python SDK, but that's something for me and Tarek to think about a bit, I guess, is maybe we should aim for a much lower minimum Python version, something like 3.4 or something that basically everyone has nowadays. But it depends on what the CloudEvents SDK uses for minimum Python version. Of course,
but as much as you go down in the Python version, you will not have this strongly typed stuff we're talking about.
Yeah, of course, we have to find a good balance there as well. That's a good point.
Okay, cool. So we have good discussion. I think we can create an issue to track the CLI specific. I can do that.
Thanks, Andrea.
Yeah, I think both Python and Go have their plus and pros and cons. But yeah, so let's discuss it on the issue. So anything else on the Python side of things?
No, I'm happy.
All right, moving on. I started working on a new version of the Go Sdk. The reason for it, for a new version to exist to begin with, is that the spec has changed or is changing compared to when the original Go Sdk was written. And yeah, so I wanted to make an SDK that was focused on the SDK side of things. I mean, we can build the CLI as well, but yeah, I wanted to make sure we have the SDK as the focus. Yeah, so I had some, I started working on it. I have some ideas. I can go through the ideas if that's okay. But just to show how the SDK would look like from a user point of view. So my idea was to have like a generic CDEvent object that can be created through source and subject ID. Things like version, the event ID, timestamp, subject source, they're set automatically, but can be overwritten. And then I would have like a subject content interface with multiple implementations. And
what does that interface look like, out of curiosity?
Yeah, the interface is basically very okay. Let me see if I have it here. Is this not wrong screen? Yeah, so it's just get value, set value, get event type, and get subject type. And then basically every specific one, like a pipeline run subject content would be a struct with the fields that are specific for that event. And then it would implement the get event type and the get subject type so that the overall event can set those values. And the get value, set value basically are there to allow getting and setting specific fields through the key name instead of direct access. I mean, both would be available.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so that's just a starting point, but basically then it would look like this. So you create a new event for this new event helper, subject ID source. Then you define your body as a struct with your fields that are specific to the event. And then you would do like a set content on the event. And then I was thinking of having something like a SCloud event that would generate a cloud event from the SDK, a cloud event object from the cloud event SDK. So that cloud event could be then sent through the cloud event SDK directly, which means that then once you have a cloud event, you can set properties for how you send it. So if you want to have retries, what is the HTTP sync you're sending it to, or if you want to add extra header or extra things, you can just manipulate your cloud event object. So that was my kind of rough proposal, but I wanted to collect feedback on how this looks like before I go on and implement it.
So basically, you are going to doing something what as we did in Python, it separates the CLI package from the core package or from the content package itself. going to separate the command line from the core package.
Yes. So there's no command line yet here.
As far as I saw the old Go Sdk, I was thinking like there might be a very good space for using generics, since it's a new in Go. I didn't use it actually so much, but I think there might be a good space to start using generics, since the application heavily depend on multiple type, inherit or have the same specification for a base type. So I was thinking you might start thinking about using generics in Go.
Yeah, I was gonna mention something similar just because I saw that empty interface in in that subject content, but I don't know if you can solve that, because I'm imagining the key and value, or the value can be arbitrary, like any type is my guess. So it might be a little hard to use generics there, but like I said, I would have to see the use case. And then one thing that might be useful, I can actually ping you offline, Andrea, and then kind of go over like what you've written, because like I said, I have a lot of experience with Go, so I might be able to provide some really good feedback in terms of just writing idiomatic Go, as well as some good ideas like I was talking about earlier, adding like handlers or hooks to allow users to like listen for certain event, or like when they create an event, that can be post, or a hook could be executed after the fact. So yeah.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we can chat further offline if you want. I mean, this is a very starting point, but yeah, I guess the main thing was the main dilemma I had in the beginning was, do we want to have like a core, an overall different object for every event, or trying to do something like this where we have like one CDEvent interface that can support multiple different bodies inside.
I think you want an object or a definition per event type, right? Because if you're receiving an event in Go, like I imagine you would want that to be an actual strut, right? As opposed to like a map string interface. Like working with empty interfaces in Go is like the worst thing. So so that's why I really think per event makes the most sense. And you can see what you did right there, like that pipeline run queue subject content. You can do that, you can create that that strut right there, as opposed to a map. You can do the same thing, but it's just now a map, right? So but now you have to know the keys of the map, and I think that makes it more of a pain, as opposed to just going to the documentation or looking at the code or using the IDE to fill in those necessary fields, right?
Right. Yeah. So the question is, I mean, do we want to, because of the context is shared for all the events, so it's the same. So I can have a type for the context side, and then just make a type that make multiple types that reuse the context, and then have a new one, or like this is the way I was thinking of creating it. But yeah, I can switch back to having like top level specific type, if it makes sense. Maybe what I can do also, I can prototype both approaches so that you can compare in the code how they would look like, and yeah, we can discuss.
Yeah, just an example would be actually great for the differences.
Okay. trying to capture some notes. Okay. Yeah, for the CLI, I mean, we discussed already before, so maybe there won't be a CLI in Go. Maybe yes, we can refer to the other issue. Okay. Anything else on the Go SDK?
I have questions, but I'll ask them offline because it's more of just like, you know, just like it's like details more of implementation than it's helpful for this discussion. But yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so right now I'm working in a branch on my repo, so my fork. But if you want to collaborate on that, then I can start getting even earlier thing into the CDEvents repo, or I could create a branch there, so it's easier to discuss, to share the code.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Either one's fine. Yeah, I'll ping you after this meeting.
Cool. Yeah, so the last thing I had on the agenda for today is discussion about binary and structure mode. So I went back and talked to the Cloud Event folks about this, and basically, so just to summarize, so I had an idea that based on also Ben inputs, that we could try and have a binary mode for CDEvents, and the reasoning for that would be to basically allow CDEvents to transport an untouched payload from vendor, and the way to achieve that would be to get CDEvent specific content into headers, HTTP headers, basically, or some kind of header, depending on the protocol that is used. But yeah, so the problem with that, after talking with the Cloud Event folks, it seems that existing implementation of Cloud Events routers, they would drop these extra headers because they're not known to them. So they would only transport things which are Cloud Event specific headers or something in HTTP, for instance, things that start with CE dash, and everything else would be ignored. And it's basically this approach would kind of break the payload, sorry, the encapsulation. So it doesn't seem to be a valid option, really. So I think the only option that we have left is to have like the CDEvent content wrapped, as we proposed in the spec, into context or meta part, and another field in the JSON where we the vendor data.
One thing that is a little confusing to me is why don't they just have a header which is like x dash CDEvents dash like metadata or something that you can put whatever you want in there, or just have multiple of those headers and they don't drop them? That seems like an easy, and most standards like support some, or like most HTTP standards support something like that, where a header needs to have, you know, arbitrary headers can be added. You know, they usually follow this format. So has that been brought up at all? Because that's pretty standard.
Yeah, that is possible. I mean, they have a concept of extensions, so you can define Cloud Event extensions. So you basically define CE dash something fields, and those something are your fields. But it becomes, I think, a bit cumbersome to include everything in these such extensions. I mean, we could have a very large number of extensions, because we would need multiple ones for each event type, or we could go down the route of saying, okay, we take everything that we would send as from the CD event body and base64 encode it and put it in a single header. For instance, that could be a way of doing it, but it's not very, it is doable, but I think it's not very useful for kind of seeing the content, or if you want to use that content for filtering your event and so forth, it's not very friendly.
Okay, so if we're not going to go that route, so are you suggesting then we add a new field to the vendor data? Because the issue there, right, is if you have some service down the line that doesn't use CD event, that vendor data, that new field is also going to be dropped, right? It's the same issue.
Yeah, I understand that, but I don't really have. So the problem is something also that Matthias pointed out. That's an additional problem. Even if we manage to have the same exact content, let's say we take Tecton, for instance, that sends cloud events already, and we want to keep the same content as Tecton sends today, but we also want to send a CD event. Even if we manage to keep the same exact payload, the event type is different. So a receiver that expects to have a certain event type would not see the event type that he expects. He will see a CD event type. So I think the solution for ending multiple type of receivers would be then to send multiple type of events. So if I'm a producer and I can send in parallel a CD event and the original kind of event that I used to send, then each receiver can use the type of event that they can understand.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think that's fair. Like I said, like as long as we're not touching the payload, I think that's fine. So are you thinking that this new field exists in the SDK, right? We're not adding this to each model that the customer has in their service, right? Or are we? Like, let's say I have like some service, right? Like, let's say I'm, for instance, like S3 in AWS, right? And I have all these models. Let's say I have this bucket model. Do I add this new field there, or is that going to be added when I use the SDK?
Basically, yeah. When you use the SDK, you would say data, and then in this data field in the SDK, you would set your model, and that everything is combined for you by the SDK, if it makes sense.
Okay. So
is
like
that your
this,
question?
Yeah, well, my what I'm wondering is where is this new field being added? Is this being added to the service code, or is this being added to the CDEvents SDK? Like, where is this new field? Like, where is this getting introduced?
I mean, in terms of specification, let me open the spec. I mean, yeah, this is up for discussion, of course, and we have not defined it yet. But let's see if we have a decent. So right now, this is like what the JSON looks for a CD event, what it looks like. We have a context, we have a subject. So we could have an extra one, which is data, and we have the vendor data in there. So that was kind of the option I was thinking of. And then from the SDK point of view, when you create your event, you can pass in your data. And
it contains that new field. Okay, because that's what I was wondering. Because now, so you expect, I guess this brings up the question. So if I'm a service, right, now you expect every model that is going to be interacting with CDEvents now needs to have this new field attached to it, right?
Well, if you're an event producer and you want to send a CD event, you'll need to use a CDEvent SDK, right? So, and you can basically build your CD event with a right data that you need for your subject. And then you could still pass your original content that you had before into the data, the vendor data property.
Okay,
of
yeah,
the
that's what I'm
SDK.
wondering. So is the vendor data, are we adding the new field there?
So the new field would be at the same level. I mean, could be at the same level as context and subject, I was thinking.
Yeah, but no. What I mean is where the new field is modeled is what I'm asking. Is the new field when in the definition, right? Let's say I have this class in my service. Let's call it, thing to send class. So this thing to send class has, let's say, name is a string, and then let's say an int value, right? So those are the two fields in it. This new metadata, CDEvents metadata field, does that live now in this new model or this model that I have, or is this going to be introduced in this in the CDEvents SDK? Because what I'm wondering is the customer going to have to change all their models? That's what this comes down to. Are all the customers now need to go and add this field to satisfy this spec essentially, which is fine, right? But I just want to make sure I'm understanding like where this thing is being added.
Right. Yeah. No. I mean, in my understanding, you would not add something in the existing model. You would create a CDEvents and then set the existing model into the data section of the CDEvents, right?
Yeah. No, I think that's fine. I think in the GitHub issue, I proposed like, adding an extra field, right? Which I think it makes it really straightforward. So, and I actually prefer that as opposed to the headers one. I think it's more flexible. So, I'm actually +1 for this. I really think it's a good idea.
Okay, cool. All right. So I will make a PR to remove what we have in the spec today in terms of binary content mode. I mean, it's not much, but we have like this headers that needs to be filled and some comments here in the content mode. So I will remove mentions from the binary, and I will make a proposal then for this new data field. Yeah, so we can review those and hopefully merge them in. All right. So we are almost at time. Is there anything else I wanted to talk about today?
I still have some questions, but mostly like how would this new field be popular? Like what would exist in this, right? Like how is it getting this data, I guess is my question, right? Is it pulling, is it like does the vendor data have like metadata or like annotations? Like how is it populating this new field?
Yeah, I guess we'll need to maybe take a specific example and try to see in details how this would look like. I mean, the way I see it, I mean, there is one constraint with this approach is that this data would be either JSON, or if it's not JSON, it would have to be kind of base64 encoded so that you can put it in JSON there, because it's part of a JSON body basically. So that's the main constraint. But in terms of how we would build it in code, maybe we can work on some example, or if you have some code examples that you would like to map onto using CDEvents, that we could start as a starting point and for the discussion, I think that would be great.
Yeah, I have a few ideas, but The only issue is I don't know if you can do it in Python. You probably can because Python can do anything, but my knowledge of Python is very limited. So I can maybe propose, like once you create this PR, I can give maybe an idea, and then someone with like Python experience could say, hey, this isn't possible in Python, or hey, this is possible in Python.
Cool. Yeah, I'm sure we should be able to do things in Python and in Go. I mean, they're both pretty flexible. So
Yeah.
all right. Yeah, we're at time for today, but great to see everyone. Great discussion. And yeah, see you in the next meeting or chat earlier. Thanks, luck.
Yeah, and thanks again for the demo, Tarek. It was really
Yeah,
cool to
you're
see.
welcome.
Yeah, and good seeing everybody. All right, I'll talk to you guys later.
Thank you all. Good meeting.
Thanks, Sarah. Bye.
Bye.